Hip hip hooray, folks! Fantasy football is back. I'm going to start off my rankings with the running back rankings, number 15 to 1, with ESPN projections to back up my picks. Number 15 is San Francisco back Frank Gore. In 2012, he had 1,212 rushing yards, 9 TDs, but only 234 receiving yards. Now, to be a very, very good back, you have to have a lot of touchdowns or a lot of receiving yards. And Gore doesn't have both. He has touchdowns but not receiving yards. And the San Francisco backfield's crowded with Kendall Hunter, LaMichael James, and more. So I think he'll have not as many yards, but just as much touchdowns. You shouldn't be worried to draft him, and I like him for this year. Number 14 running back is Matt Forte of the Chicago Bears. I had him last year. He was very inconsistent and kind of annoying to have, but he ended up with decent numbers. He had 1,094 rush yards, only 6 touchdowns. 6 touchdowns is why he's only 14 and not higher. He had 340 receiving yards, and that was most of his value came. That gave him 34 extra fantasy points, and that really helped him. He's a good receiving back, and that's why you should draft him. His projection is 1,043 rush yards, 7 touchdowns, and almost 500 receiving yards. That's a pretty big year, and you should definitely draft him in maybe the 3rd, 4th round when Frank Gore gets drafted. Number 13 running back is Monty Ball of Denver. He's a rookie, and the Broncos took a flyer on him in the 2nd round. And last year in Wisconsin, as a senior, Monty Ball rushed for 1,830 yards, 22 touchdowns. The thing on Monty Ball, though, is he doesn't receive and he cannot catch the ball out of the backfield. He had 72 receiving yards the entire year. That's horrible. Arian Foster last year had 72 receiving yards on 1 play. So put that in perspective. Monty Ball cannot catch the ball, and that's why he went up being an elite running back, but only a good one at best. And also, he had 356 carries. 356! That's crazy. He might be worn down, I'm not sure, but I like him this year, and so does ESPN. His projection is 1,037 rush yards, 9 touchdowns, and that'll give you a lot of fantasy goodies. I like him in the up-paced offense with Peyton Manning, Walker, Demaryius Thomas. I like their offense. And on the draw plays, Monty Ball will sneak it up the middle, and he'll get a lot of goal line carries. So I like his fantasy value this year. So draft him when you get Forte and Gore, maybe 2nd, 3rd round. Number 12 running back is Steven Jackson, who was on the Rams last year, but has now been traded to the Atlanta Falcons. Last year, I had him on my team, and again, he was frustrating for me. He had 1,000 yards, only 4 touchdowns, and that's what makes Steven Jackson good. Steven Jackson gets a lot of touchdowns, and that makes his value good, but come on, 4 touchdowns? And he had 320 receiving yards, which is good, and that's what made his value very high. His projection is back to typical Steven Jackson numbers. Almost 1,000 yards, 10 touchdowns, about 400 receiving yards. That's a good fantasy year. I'd rather have him than the other 3 guys, Gore, Forte, and Ball, because I like his consistency more. And Michael Turner last year for the Falcons had maybe, I think, 700, 800 yards, but he had 10 touchdowns, and that's what made him good. The Falcons already said they want to run the ball more, and they already give the running backs carries on the goal line. And that's the Atlanta Falcons football, running the ball up the middle on the goal line. Steven Jackson will get goal line carries and a lot of touchdowns, so you shouldn't be worried about him. He's going to score a lot of points for you this year. Number 11 running back is Stephen Ridley of New England. Last year, he had a breakout season with Josh McDaniels as a new coordinator, and he had 1,236 yards and 12 touchdowns. 12 touchdowns. He's another guy the Patriots like in the red zone. And now, without Wes Welker, I think Ridley's going to get more touches and more red zone carries. And Hernandez, Gronkowski's hurt, Welker's gone, all of them are gone. I really like Ridley this year. He's going to have more opportunities, more carries than he did last year. His projection, though, is a bit of a down one, but I disagree with ESPN. ESPN says 1,247 yards, 10 touchdowns only. But, I mean, either way, that's still a top 11 running back. He's top 10 running back, I should say. And I have him at number 11. I really like him this year. But his one drawback, he doesn't catch the ball like Moneyball. He had 51 receiving yards last year, but that's not why you got him. You got him to score touchdowns and get yards, and that's what he does. So I would draft him and draft him high. Number 10 running back is Washington's Alfred Morris. Now, I think he's a bit overrated this year. I mean, he had a fantastic rookie year. I mean, he had 1,600 yards, 13 touchdowns. But there are other issues with him. He carried the ball 335 times, and he had 77 receiving yards. That's not good. He'll get worn down like Moneyball, and then he can't catch the ball, so he won't have as much, fantasy points. And his projection is, again, over 300 carries, and that will be tough on the young back. He's on pace. His projection, I should say, is like 1,500 yards, 11 touchdowns, but he doesn't receive the ball out of the backfield, and teams are going to key on him with RG3 staying in the pocket more because of his knee. So I think RG3 won't be as mobile, so you can key on Alfred Morris now, and that's why I think his value goes down. But I still like him, number 10. Should get touchdowns, a lot of yards. I would still draft him. Just, I'd rather have other guys ahead of him. Other guys, as in number 9, Trent Richardson for Cleveland. I really like this guy, but I wanted to put him higher, but I couldn't. Number 9 really fits in. I mean, last year he had 950 yards, 12 touchdowns in 13 games. He missed a lot of games. He's very injury prone because he takes a lot of hits and beating. He receives the ball very well for a big guy. Almost 400 receiving yards. That gets him a lot of fantasy points. But he relies on his touchdowns and receiving yards because, frankly, he doesn't rush for that many yards. ESPN has him on a very good year though. 1,200 yards, 11 touchdowns, and almost 400 receiving yards. A very good back. Just be wary that Cleveland's offense is bad, and also that he's very injury prone. But I like him this year, and for on. Number 8 running back is LaShawn McCoy of Philly, who was also injured last year, but he still had a good year even though he was hurt. In 10 games, McCoy had 840 rush yards, 5 touchdowns, and 400 receiving yards. That's on pace for about 1,300 rush yards, 9 touchdowns, and 500 to 600 receiving yards. That's a monster year. LaShawn McCoy was in the top 3 overall picks last year, and his value dropped a lot, but I have him at 8. I really like him this year, but again, his offense might not move the ball well, so teams will crowd the box and pick up on him more than they would if Mike Vick was consistent. His projection's very good though, and he receives the ball great for a running back, maybe the best one in the league. 1,100 yards, 8 touchdowns, and 529 receiving yards. I mean, the guy catches the ball, he scores the ball. I like this guy in fantasy football this year. I would draft him second round, or maybe even late first round. Number 7 is Ray Rice, Baltimore, and I think he's being a bit overrated too. Just because Bernard Pierce is in the backfield for the Ravens, and Ray Rice had a horrible playoffs, and Pierce had a great playoffs, and he's going to steal carries from him. I mean, probably not that many carries, but if you hear, the Ravens already said they're going to look to give the ball to Pierce more. That worries me as a Ray Rice fan, so I know I'm not going to draft him. He'll still be a first rounder, he'll still be a top 7 running back, but I just wouldn't, his numbers won't be the same as they were last year. Last year, he was very inconsistent as well. He only had 1,100 yards, while he had way more yards the prior 2 years. 9 touchdowns is good, and he receives the ball great, almost 500 yards. But again, I just don't know if the carries will be there like they were 2 years ago. His projection is very on cue with what he does. Almost 1,200 yards, 11 touchdowns, 500 receiving yards, and he receives the ball, he scores. I still like him, but just be wary that Bernard Pierce is in the backfield and be careful. He'll be a top 5, top 7 pick, but just be careful. I like him still, but not as much as I did last year. Here's a guy I like a lot, and he's one of my favorite running backs, and I want him on my team. Number 6 running back, CJ Spiller of Buffalo. Last year, he had 200 carries for 1,200 yards, 8 touchdowns, and almost 500 receiving yards. And that's with Fred Jackson in the backfield. Fred Jackson's gone now, and his projection is way up. 252 carries, 1,500 yards, 9 touchdowns, and 400 receiving yards. I think he's going to have a better year than that. I'm so high on CJ Spiller. He'll go top 5 in your draft, and I really like him. Number 5 is Doug Martin of Tampa Bay. Last year, he had 300 carries, for 1,400 yards, 12 touchdowns, and almost 500 receiving yards. If you can see, all these top guys receive the ball very well, and Doug Martin receives the ball very well, and he scores touchdowns, and that's what's going to get him on the board. I mean, he's going to have a great year again, because I like the offense. It fits him perfectly, and he's a very explosive back. 1,500 yards, 9 touchdowns, 500 receiving yards is his projection. I think that's what he's going to do. He'll be drafted top 10 overall, and I like him a lot. I love number 4 running back Jamal Charles of Kansas City, though. Last year, he had 6 touchdowns, 1,500 yards, and 236 receiving yards. And that's with a horrible quarterback, and he missed a game, and he was in the coach's doghouse. So imagine if he's out of the doghouse, and now he's Alex Smith, and he's going to have a lot better stats, I can tell you that. ESPN has 1,500 yards, 6 touchdowns, 500 receiving yards. I say 10 touchdowns, 1,700 yards. I really love Jamal Charles, and I want him on my team. He'll go top 5, maybe top 3 overall in your draft. Number 3 running back is Marshawn Lynch of Seattle. People aren't as high as him, but I still really like him. He doesn't receive the ball well, only 200 yards last year receiving, but he had 1,600 rush yards and 12 touchdowns. He gets all the goal line carries, and him and Russell Wilson are a very dynamic duo, and they'll work off each other. Wilson will make Lynch better, and I like him a lot this year. His touchdowns should be up, while his yards should be a little bit down, but his touchdowns should be way up. He's projected 1,400 yards, 13 touchdowns, and I really like him. He's consistent, he gets you points, and he gets you yards. I love him a lot this year, so draft him. He'll go top 5 in your draft. Number 2 running back Arian Foster of Houston will definitely go in the top 3 of your draft. Last year he had 17 touchdowns. 17! And he had 1,400 yards. Now, he only had 200 receiving yards, but the year before he had 500, so you know he's capable, and I think he gets back to that style of game this year, and so does ESPN. ESPN has him for almost 1,400 yards, 15 touchdowns, and 400 rec yards, and I think that's exactly what he's going to do. He's a very explosive player, he's consistent, he gets you a lot of points. Draft him, but you're going to have to spend a high pick on him. And number 1, obviously, running back Adrian Peterson of Minnesota. He's ridiculous. What else can you say? 2,000 yards, 14 touchdowns. His projection is the same. 1,700 yards, 14 touchdowns. He's going to go number 1 in your draft no matter what. You need. This guy's great. If you have a number 1 pick, you have to pick Adrian Peterson. Not much you could say about him. He's great. He scores touchdowns. He runs the ball great. I love him, and he should have a very similar year to last year. Thanks for watching. Tune in next week for my quarterback rankings, and follow me on Twitter at FantasySports7.